Hey everyone, Israel is currently in a war against the terror organization Hamas, and we know how hard it can be to keep up with all the news. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of the latest developments out of Israel, we're here for you. I'm Lajar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
Day 137 of the war in Gaza, and Israeli officials say the end is in sight, with another estimated 6 to 8 weeks needed to destroy remaining Hamas assets. The Israeli estimate comes as Hamas admits devastating losses in the war. And ILTV's Steve Leibovich has more.
Intense fighting will continue in Gaza for another 6 to 8 weeks, including in Rafah city, before scaling back the war effort. That's the estimate of senior Israeli officials, who say it will take that long to significantly damage Hamas's remaining capabilities, paving the way for a shift to a lower intensity phase of targeted airstrikes and special forces operations. The Israeli estimate came as Hamas admitted devastating losses in the war for the first time. A Hamas official based in Qatar claimed that the terrorist group had lost 6,000 fighters. The IDF says that troops have killed some 12,000 of Hamas's estimated 30,000 gunmen in the Gaza Strip since war erupted on October 7th. All but 6 of the Hamas brigades have been eliminated, and the IDF has reached all Hamas strongholds throughout Gaza, except 2 camps in the center and Rafah on the Egyptian border, teeming with some 1.3 million Palestinians, mostly displaced from their Gaza homes. The army says that Rafah is the next target, but only after civilians are given an opportunity to reach designated safe zones. Hamas did not say how many more thousands of its fighters are wounded and unable to fight. The comments were a rare acknowledgement from the terror group that it suffered massive losses in the Gaza fighting and appeared to mark the first time it is differentiated between combatants and civilians in the death toll from the war. Hamas-appointed health officials say that some 29,000 Gazans have been killed since the start of the war. It does not indicate how many were Hamas combatants. It also does not say how many were forced into harm's way or used as human shields by Hamas. Meanwhile, Israeli officials are denying a report by the Saudi news site Elaf that Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, has fled to Egypt via tunnels from Gaza. The denial followed a report which said that terrorist leadership, including Sinwar and his brother Mohammed, recently escaped Rafah by a tunnel to the Sinai.
And Hamas sexual violence during the October 7th rampage was both systematic and deliberate, and continues on hostages in captivity. Those are the findings published today by the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel. Sexual violence was committed on a wide scale during the October 7th massacre, and these crimes continue against hostages held in Gaza. According to an extensive report released today by the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel, there were multiple attackers. Sexual assaults were carried out in front of victims' relatives and amid murders, and included uniquely sadistic practices. According to the report, there were instances of rape and sexual violence carried out in 4 areas: during onslaught against the Nova Festival, on the communities close to the Gaza border, on military bases, and attacks ongoing against the hostages held in Gaza captivity. The report details rape committed while the victims were threatened with weapons, with multiple instances of gang rape of victims. The report says women, girls, and men were all targeted for sexual assault. In most cases, the victims were murdered after or even during the rape. The document was compiled by researchers who analyzed both confidential and public information, including the testimonies of eyewitnesses. The association says it will submit the report of what it called the sadistic sex crimes of Hamas to the United Nations for action.
Defense Minister Yoav Gallant disclosed that over 30 UNRWA employees actively participated in the October 7 massacre, including kidnapping civilians and soldiers, which once again raises serious concerns about the integrity of the UN agency and its role in the region. And ILTV's William Sharon has the details.
In a press briefing on Friday, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant disclosed new startling information about UNRWA employees in the October 7th massacre. According to Gallant, Israel possesses intelligence indicating that over 30 UNRWA employees actively participated in violent acts, including the kidnapping of civilians and soldiers. This revelation once again raises serious concerns about the integrity of the UN agency and its role in the region. Gallant presented evidence suggesting that 12% of UNRWA's 13,000 employees are linked to the terrorist organization in Gaza, with 1,468 actively involved. Shockingly, these individuals hold seemingly harmless positions within the organization, such as social workers, school counselors, and math teachers. Gallant also shared a video captured by security cameras at the Erez crossing on October 7th, showing Palestinian Red Cross and medics aiding a wounded Nukhba terrorist. In a separate development, Israeli officials released a video showing a UN relief worker, identified as Fasil al-Muslimi al-Nami, clearly kidnapping a murdered Israeli man during Hamas's October 7th massacre, providing yet again UNRWA's roots in cooperation within Hamas in Gaza.
The Air Force struck hard and deep into Lebanon, pounding Hezbollah targets near the coastal city of Sidon, some 60 kilometers north of the border. And ILTV Steve Leibovich has more.
IDF fighter jets attacked two Hezbollah weapons storage facilities 60 kilometers north of the Israeli border, near the Lebanese city of Sidon. Until now, Sidon was considered outside the target area of Israel in its cross-border exchanges with Hezbollah. The strike was in response to the launch of a UAV toward the lower Galilee earlier in the day that reached outside Tiberias. That incident is still under investigation.
אנחנו באחר הצהריים איתרנו כלי טיס בלתי מאויש של חיזבאללה סמוך לטבריה. ככל הנראה חצה היום והתרסק סמוך לטבריה. בתגובה לפעולה הזאת אנחנו תקפנו מחסנים של אמצעי לחימה סמוך לצידון. אנחנו נמשיך להגיב באופן נחוש והתקפי אל מול ארגון הטרור חיזבאללה.
The IDF also said it conducted strikes on Hezbollah infrastructure in the Meis al-Jabal, al-Adisa, and Daria areas in Lebanon. Meanwhile, a related report in the French media, an investigative report in the newspaper Libération, claimed that Hezbollah has hundreds of kilometers of underground terror tunnels more complex than those in Gaza. Israeli leaders have been threatening war in Lebanon if Hezbollah continues its cross-border attacks and insists the terrorists must pull back beyond the Litani River, as called for in UN Resolution 1701.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple. And moving on, my next guest has a truly remarkable and terrifying story to share. She discovered that she's a target of an Iranian assassination attempt. Saskia Pantel, a Swedish Zionist activist, joins us now in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so first of all, what can you tell us about this sort of assassination plot? How did you find out about it? I know that when you first found out about it, you thought it was a prank or a joke. So what can you tell us?
Well, it was extremely surreal. I got a phone call one day here in Israel. Somebody saying they were calling from the Swedish security services, SAPO, and that I was the target of an assassination terror plot by the Iranian state to kill 3 Swedish Jewish citizens. So what made you specifically a target? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and why Iran would specifically target you. Sure. Well, I've been very active in the Zionist world and Zionist Federation for many years. I started as the vice president, became the president of the Zionist Federation nationally in Sweden. So I used to hold a lot of rallies for Israel and against anti-Semitism. And I saw myself as working for good, and I felt that I was protected in a country, especially a country like Sweden. So I believe that I became a target because I was using my voice and speaking up against hate.
Mm-hmm. And has the threat been neutralized? What can you tell us about that?
So they arrested 2 people who pretended to be Afghani refugees, and they came with the refugee wave back in 2015. It was later discovered that Swedish authorities had been warned. One of them was flagged twice before getting asylum, that he was not Afghani, but actually connected to the Iranian regime, which it later turned out to be. They were thankfully arrested prior to even moving forward with the terror plans, but Sweden did not manage to convict them. They were deported, they were released back to Iran. And all of this came up also thanks to Swedish radio, who did an investigative piece, linking this also to the Iranian embassy in Stockholm. And this is where I'm not sure about the threat being eliminated, because, okay, 2 agents were sent back to Iran, but if they're working with the embassy, and the embassy is part of doing espionage on Swedish territory against Swedish citizens, there's a huge problem.
Absolutely. I mean, and so is Sweden doing anything now to investigate, to make sure that this threat has been eliminated?
Their response to all of this is that they consider the threat gone because these 2 people are deported. I don't believe that that's the case, because if Sweden doesn't do something thorough about this, start off by cutting the diplomatic ties with Iran, why have an embassy that's also linked to terror plan to Swedish citizens? They need to take further measures. They have been questioned in regards to how they handled the asylum for these 2 people. And they basically just stated that it's passed, it worked out for the better that they were caught, but that's not good enough.
Mm-hmm. And have you been back to Sweden since you've discovered of this assassination attempt?
Yes, I did go back 3 weeks into the war here in Israel with my baby girl and my family. It's different being in Israel during a war now as a mother, but I only stayed for 2 weeks, and it was a very hard decision because I felt I should not have to fear for my child's safety from sirens and being under missile attacks here in Israel, from also Iran being behind Hamas or Hezbollah, or going to Sweden where I'm also threatened by Iran, but on an individual level. So it shouldn't be that. If you're a Swedish citizen, you should feel like you can go back to Sweden and be protected.
And I mean, so from what I'm hearing, you still have a concern for your life should you leave Israel, should you travel abroad. I mean, here in Israel, do you feel safe?
Yes, only in Israel.
Only in Israel. And back in Sweden, you didn't feel safe. You were still concerned for
I didn't feel safe, but also prior to this happening, I've had so many death threats over at least a decade's amount of time for being an activist. And I tried to get hidden identity for 10 years in Sweden, and they just kept telling me they only do so if there's an actual threat. Now there is a threat, and they say it's gone, but it doesn't feel that way. And at the end of the day, it's also not about me. It's about every Swedish citizen. Sweden let these people in, and it endangers Swedish citizens regardless if they were born in Iran originally and came as political refugees, fleeing from the Ayatollah and the regime, or if they, like me, I was born in America. I'm an American citizen also, and I came to Sweden and thought I could live there safely, but it turned out not to be the case.
So an unfortunate situation in Sweden, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh, speaking at the Munich Security Conference, underscored the need for Palestinian unity, signaling a willingness to engage with Hamas if key conditions are fulfilled. The Palestinian Authority is actively seeking unity with Hamas, with talks potentially scheduled in Moscow on February 26, according to PA Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference, Shtayyeh emphasized the importance of Palestinian unity and expressed readiness to engage with Hamas if certain prerequisites are met. Shtaya highlighted the need for Hamas to accept the political platform of the PLO and to commit to popular resistance. He called for a focus on achieving unity and moving past past conflicts, stating one should not continue focusing on October 7. Efforts to reconcile with Hamas come amidst a broader reform agenda announced by the PA in January, which includes governance and security sector reforms. Shtaya emphasized that these reforms are part of a broader push for Palestinian rights and an end to the so-called Israeli occupation. However, challenges remain, including the question of Hamas' role within the PLO and the broader Palestinian political landscape. The PA is calling for international support for Palestinian statehood based on the 1967 borders as a step towards resolving the conflict with Israel. With tensions high and a lack of negotiating partner in Israel, the PA, brokered by Russia, is looking to the international community, including the United States, Europe, and Arab countries, for support in achieving Palestinian independence. So the Palestinian Authority is actively seeking unity with Hamas, and with us to analyze is founder and director of the Palestinian Media Watch, Itamar Marcus. Itamar, Hamas killed PA officials and took over Gaza by force in 2007, killing PA officials. Aren't they still enemies?
Fatah and Hamas definitely are still enemies. They compete with each other for power. They each want to rule the entire Palestinian population. What we have now is a very unique situation where Hamas is about to be destroyed in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority has no support of the Palestinian population. What you have is 90% of the population supporting Hamas, but they don't have a framework to rule. And you've got Fatah that has international support, but they don't have the people behind them. So what we're having here is a marriage of convenience between Fatah and Hamas. Fatah will be the face of this government, which will bring them international support and international funding. But Hamas will be the power behind it, because Hamas, that has the support of the people, they're the ones that have to give their stamp of approval. So like I say, it's a marriage of convenience. It's not a marriage of love.
Do you want to say that at this point, Hamas still has the support of the people in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority?
They certainly have the support in the Palestinian Authority. They've had more support in Judea and Samaria than they had in Gaza already from the month and a half, 2 months, where their support was 20% higher amongst West Bank Arabs as opposed to Gaza. And that's clear because the people in Gaza have suffered tremendously. I haven't seen a poll since the real terrible destruction of the last month in Gaza. It could be that their support in Gaza has gone lower. However, the fundamental belief in Hamas ideology, that it's a war for Allah, that Jews have to be destroyed, Jews have to be killed, that people are going to believe in, even if Hamas doesn't have any frameworks and structures, and even if Hamas brought suffering on them. So whatever Fatah is going to want to do, in order to get the support of the people, they are going to have to bring Hamas into it.
What do you think will be the Palestinian Authority objectives in the post-Gaza war period? Still a long time to go, but what do you think that will be?
The Palestinian Authority is trying to use this to jumpstart international recognition for a Palestinian state. The number one ideology of the Palestinian Authority is victimhood. And as far as the Palestinian Authority is concerned, October 7th is ancient history, and everything since October 8th onward is current history. And since from October 8th onward, Palestinians have been suffering, and whatever number, 30,000, whether it's complete lie or partial truth, doesn't matter. That's the number they're using. We've had 30,000 people killed. We deserve a state. So that's their message to the international community now. And for all sorts of interesting reasons, a lot of the different countries are supporting them. The United States is supporting it because Biden has an election coming up and he's been losing his base. He needs the Arab base and he needs a democratic base completely in order to run this. The irony here is that the international community wants to put in a Fatah, Palestinian Authority government, which is going to be only a mask. Literally, it's going to be a facade, because right behind them, you've got Hamas with all the power, from the people. So it's shocking and it's tragic that the international community doesn't see what they're building here, because should they give recognition to this kind of an entity, and should they continue funding the Palestinian Authority, and should there be any kind of democracy in the Palestinian Authority, within a very short time, Hamas is going to be de facto ruling what's going on there with Western money.
Yes, and we're also seeing the American call for a two-state solution. The U.S. is also calling for reform of the Palestinian Authority and its remaking in the post-war period. Is the PA capable of ending its incitement against Israel, and can it, in your opinion, become maybe a constructive force moving forward?
Well, first of all, what's ironic is that when you listen to what the Americans and the Europeans, when they talk about the Palestinian Authority reforming, everything they're talking about is an administration, its structure. They want to have more transparency. No one's talking about essence. No one's even talking about the incitement. No one's talking about the ideology. No one's talking about what they believe in. The Palestinian Authority has brainwashed its people for so many years that this is a religious war for Allah, that the Jews are the enemy of Allah, the Jews are the enemy of humanity. That doesn't disappear just because the Palestinian Authority stopped saying it. The people believe this. It's why they supported October 7th. It's why they celebrated the massacre of Jews. And the chance of this kind of an entity all of a sudden reversing directions and telling its people, Jews are okay. We can live beside the Jews. They're not the enemy of Allah. They're not monkeys and pigs. They're not Satan. How are they going to do that? So the only way there could be a Palestinian government that can lead the people to any kind of a peaceful future with the Israelis, it has to have none of the current actors, zero. It has to be the Palestinian Authority, just like Hamas, has to be completely erased. Something completely new, appointed essentially by Western governments, have to take over everything, including education, culture. And then there's a chance that maybe in 10 years or another generation, we'll have a population that can make peace with us.
Yes, Itamar, thank you so much for joining us today, and stay safe.
Thank you.
And moving on, October 7th shattered many misconceptions, not only for Israelis, but for Jewish communities around the world, which are today facing unprecedented levels of anti-Semitism. This is especially true when it comes to Jewish college students and young adults. And as such, Birthright Israel has recently resumed its trips, bringing hundreds of Jewish youth to Israel to witness the atrocities of October 7th for themselves. Let's take a look. Birthright Israel resumed its 10-day Israel Experience trips in mid-January and has brought hundreds of Jewish college students and young adults from around the world to Israel during the past month alone. In the midst of the war, all with the aim of fostering a deeper connection to Israel and to the Jewish people. And additionally providing students and young adults with the knowledge, insights, and tools to combat anti-Semitism and the delegitimization of Israel. Birthright Israel is known for providing free Israel Experience trips to Jewish youth. After October 7th, the organization put its trips to Israel on hold but resumed them in January to increase demand. The current experiences includes all the highlights of traditional visits, including trips to Masada, the Western Wall, the Dead Sea, Yad Vashem, Tel Aviv's Carmel Market, and more. But now they also include opportunities for participants to bear witness to the atrocities of October 7th, visiting Hostages Square and meeting with victims and families of the hostages, as well as volunteering opportunities. Gidi Malk, the CEO of Birthright Israel, said upon announcing the resumption of trips in January that alongside a fun and meaningful experience, we want our participants to understand what happened on October 7th and gain meaningful insight on how the events affected Israeli society and Jewish communities around the world, and how our Jewish lives, values, and community help us find hope in these dark times.
That's it. I'm excited but also sad to let you know that I'm moving on to my next challenge on Israeli television. I'd like to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for believing in me, for trusting me, for watching us every day, for the beautiful messages I'm receiving from so many of you around the globe. I'm leaving this place being very proud of what ILTV is doing every day, a dedicated team of champions working extremely hard to bring the news from Israel about Israel every evening. So please stay in touch, keep following, stay safe, and rock and roll. I'm Amit Harari, sending you a big, big hug.
Yeah, before you leave us, this for you. 10 years from now, You're going to be a big star. I hope you'll remember us. And what your response was, which, why 10 years?
Why 10 years? Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank
The
you
best
for
guy at ILTV.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. Stay safe and see you next week.